Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Joy of Pixels podcast for Friday, July 17th, 2020. I am joined today by the one, the only, Akko Sambo. How are you doing today, Akko?
I'm doing all right. I'm fired up for a grand, very special lineup for today's podcast.
I'm excited. I'm in the dark right now because, all of a sudden, it has come like a huge thunderstorm through here. So if I disappear, then you go on without me, okay?
Yeah, I will take over while you sit through the shadows of Mordor and come out hopefully okay.
I also have a different background today. Some people might notice if you're watching on video. I'm rearranging, changing some things around, moving around. So yeah, hopefully this will not always look like this, but it's going to look bad for a few weeks probably.
In the middle of being evicted, but doesn't matter. We continue on with the podcast.
I'm actually in a secret location. I can't reveal where I actually am. But yeah, welcome to everybody in chat. I hope everyone is doing well. Who do we got here? We got Drunk Possum. We got Vermalt. I saw Pie. It's good to see all of you. We got a good show for you guys today.
And hello to all the listeners that may stop by on the various podcast services.
That's
where
right.
You might listen to us in the future or in the past, depending on when you're listening. But you're welcome as well.
What if somebody is listening to this?
I appreciate you.
What if somebody is listening to this like 20 years from now? What if it's like 2040 and someone's listening to this? What do we have to say to them?
I'm sorry.
Well, it's good to know that we made it.
Well, we made it to the year 2040, which would be, it's good to know that we still exist.
Yeah.
I hope I still exist at that point,
Yeah.
but I mean, all bets are off. And I'm very sorry for how we led the world to 2020. Hopefully
we apologize. Okay.
Maybe we're currently talking to our alien overlords at this point, which I wouldn't mind at this point either. So, hello.
Now we have to do a 20-year reunion podcast in 20 years. Or maybe we'll just still be doing this.
Maybe we can in 20 years listen to this podcast and talk about how we changed in 20 years.
That would be super meta.
Yeah, where we both do the podcast from a cardboard under the bridge. It will be great. It will be great.
Anyway, Akko, what have you been playing?
I've been playing, to everyone's surprise, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and the only reason why I bring it up, since I talked about the game a lot, is that in my free time I also played a little bit of Edison's Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Because it's very relaxing to just like check off random landmarks, and I did that, and then I noticed that I'm actually incredibly close to get the platinum trophy in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which feels insane.
No way.
Yes, I'm missing 2 trophies that are not hard to get. So I'm really just like maybe like an hour or 2 of playing away from completing those if I sit down and do it, which is insane.
That is insane.
I'm not a trophy hunter, but I noticed that I was already at like 80% of trophies just by normally playing. But I looked at it, and the requirements for the rest of the trophies, they weren't crazy. Like like I said, I was playing it on the side, and I was like, yeah, that's actually not too bad to do. It was things like doing all the underwater location and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, let's just do that. And now I'm just missing 2 more trophies, and then I platinumed Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is probably, now that I think of it, it's definitely the longest game that I have a platinum trophy in.
That is that's honestly really impressive. I think the only game I've platinumed is Bloodborne. And the only reason that I platinum that is just because like you do everything in the game and you platinum it. And I love that game.
For me, it's like a couple of Telltale games, because for playing through them, you get also the platinum. And then Spider-Man was the last where it kind of went out of my way to do the things. But it was a similar deal where I finished the game and I was already at like 80% completion.
Yeah, it doesn't look like
the
it's
rest of
super
the
hard to
trophies,
platinum that game.
yeah, and then the rest of the trophies was just fun to do on the side, doing on the map. So yeah, no, but it was fun realizing that, and I guess that I can put now my gaming resume.
Very cool. So what else you been playing?
Most notably, I started with Mafia 3 this week. And
Nice.
I gotta say, so I'm like roughly 4 hour, maybe four and a half, maybe hours in, and I'm having a blast with it. I love it so far. Now, I heard some of the criticism about the game that some of the mechanics will become a little bit repetitive, and I can see that. I think I see where this is coming from and where that is going. But I don't think that will, if it's not too terribly um, inhibiting the fun, I don't think it will matter too much to me personally, because so far I have to say I really enjoy what they did with the characters and the story and how they introduced me to those characters and to the scenario. For those without spoilers, but for those who are not familiar, they kind of start the game almost like in a documentary style, where you have characters that you meet along the way in the game talking in the future about the happenings,
Oh, I
what is
forgot
happening.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically like one of the main side characters is a priest called Father John, I think, um, and he is basically talking about Lincoln Clay is the main character. He was doing this and that in the past, and it's clear that he's much older in those segments than when you play, which is just a very cinematic and cool way to introduce you to the characters, and they did it in such a good way to make me instantly intrigued about my main character and the world I'm playing in. So and the world is more or less realistic. It plays in 1968 in a fictional city called New Bordeaux, which is clearly New Orleans. um, and you play as Lincoln Clay, a black orphan of a black mother with a unknown father at that time. Maybe we will find out more about that. But um, I'm not quite sure how he ends up being an orphan, but he um, becomes an orphan, gets then picked up by the local mob leader, and he kind of raises him in his family, kind of the classical story. And then he goes off into the Vietnam War, where he becomes pretty much a war hero, gets different kinds of accolades there, and becomes, I think, promoted to the special forces. And when he returns, um, and that is one of the moments where Father John kind of talks about that he does not approve of joining the mob again. But at that time in the 1960s, there weren't much opportunities for black orphans in that region, so you can't really blame him for it either. And it's obviously very timely in a way, which I didn't know,
Yeah.
the discussions, but it tackles some very heavy and serious topics, but I think in a way that is illuminating the issues of that time, but also at the same time drawing parallels to today's society, that it's not completely gone. And it really feels, I mean, obviously the comparisons to a GTA are pretty obvious, but I think where it sets itself apart is that it has much more realistic and like intentionally realistic stories. The GTA stories are intentionally a little over the top. They are
Right.
somewhat of a caricature of that gangster life, whereas this is definitely more grounded, um, darker, more and more realistic in a brutal way. Like there are some heavy scenes early on, and but at the same time very well done so far, and I have a great time with it, and I can't go around praising the amazing soundtrack the game has, which I could just turn on the game and sit in the car and listen to the radio, and I would be happy with the game playing it for 40 hours.
Oh, that's nice. I don't really remember the soundtrack, but you know what? I may have actually turned it off. I I know that's terrible. A lot of times I turn the soundtrack off in games like that. Um,
Hmm. It's fantastic. It's like a lot of 60s, late 60s music, obviously, but original music, well-known songs,
Are you worried
classic rock
about
type.
copyright strikes though?
I mean, it's the VODs are mostly muted on Twitch, so I think it would be more an issue on YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, in that sense, a little bit of a shame. But I really enjoy the music, and and I won't turn it off. And the music not only is when you're obviously in your car and listening to the radio, but also some of the cutscenes are very well directed. Like that is some good cinematic
It's very
work that
cinematic,
they
yeah.
put in. Yeah, very cinematic, and they really bring the point across of those characters and get you invested and get you invested quickly. And I was very impressed with that and how they did it. And I had just a great time in my first stream, and I will continue with the game tomorrow. So I'm super stoked to do that, because I honestly have to say these first 4 hours, I haven't been excited about the first 4 hours of a game in a long time like this. Like I was
Wow.
pleasantly surprised, because I was like, obviously I was excited to try out the game, but I also obviously heard some of the criticism, and that was kind of
So you had
received
lowered
in,
your expectations.
yeah, and I was like, oh man, I mean, I hope that I would enjoy it, and I could see it as kind of like a fun GTA clone in more of a Mafia sense. And I obviously heard about the late 60s settings, but didn't know much more beyond that. So I was kind of like, I mean, if it's like a fun GTA thing where I play through the main campaign and it's like 20 to 30 hours, I'm fine with that. Don't have to focus too much on the side stuff. Um, but then I was just really pleasantly surprised by the cinematic approach, and by the topics they approach as well. And even though they are not really feel good topics, it's presented in a very interesting way, which really makes me excited to continue.
I feel like that game kind of got the Mass Effect Andromeda treatment a little bit, where it was really it was really criticized and really judged very harshly. I mean, some of it was deserved. Was deserved. I do know that there were a lot of bugs when it first launched. It seemed like it was a bit rushed, um, but I just felt like it was judged too harshly when it first came out, because I remember playing it and I was like, "This is pretty fun. I think that this is really good." Um, and I didn't really understand why people were hating on it so much. I do remember it getting a little bit repetitive. I know that that was one of the criticisms, but I mean, repetitive is not always a negative thing if it's fun.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting to get kind of a fresh take on it. And this is your first Mafia too, right? Your first Mafia game
Yes,
that you played.
exactly. And I try to play through it before the remake comes out next month. I think it comes out end of next month, August
I think it was
27th. I
delayed.
have in mind.
Yeah,
Uh, I
delayed to
mean, it will
September.
come out at some point.
Yeah,
Um, so I want to play through it until then. And then if I enjoy it, get back into it. I obviously know that it plays in a different setting, but
yeah.
always nice to start with a franchise like that. And yeah, I think the repetitiveness kind of depends, obviously, how much you have to do of those things and how much you can avoid it, and how tedious and how long it takes to do the things that you have to do. Obviously, that the I don't know that yet, and we will see how where that goes. But it has some really good moments already. One scene I remember, and I'm not sure if that part is muted on my VOD, but maybe if it is, check it out on YouTube or so. But in the beginning. You have a scene where you escape from somewhat of a heist on a boat in an underground tunnel, and you are chased by police boats. And meanwhile, the music is playing, and it's always a different song. But I happen to have "Born to Be Wild" to be playing, and it was just the perfect song for that.
Nice.
And it was just amazing. Everything exploding around you. It was just a great action scene that really got me pumped up. And it had quite a few of those moments, not just where the cutscenes were really cinematic, but where the gameplay also fit that cinematic style with the music. And yep, I'm just a big fan so far.
Man, that's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Um, and I'm really curious to hear what you think about the original. I really want to play the original remake when it comes out, or remaster, whatever they're going to call it, because
Yeah.
it looks really good. And the first one was really well received for the time. So I'm curious how well it holds up. Like even though they're going to remaster the graphics and everything like that, I'm just curious how well the base gameplay and story holds up and everything. But I think it will. It was a really fun game back in the day.
It also reminded me of a game, and I looked it up if it still exists, but it's owned by EA, but it's not on Origins, and you can only like order like the disc on Amazon or stuff. But are you familiar with the game The Godfather, based on the movie The Godfather?
Yes,
And it
I
was a fun game.
actually
I had the game, yeah.
I have that
I
game. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the game. I mean, it was kind of GTA-ish, but it had some cool aspects to it. It had
Hmm.
original characters, had an original story, um, and
They actually got Marlon Brando to voice act that game.
yes, and obviously, like then the likenesses of some known characters from the movies, and it just had some cool mechanics to it. And I remember then getting this the second installment of the game, and that had some issues because like then had to defend some neighborhoods, and it was very annoying. But the first one was really good, so I was looking if I could maybe relive that, but it's hard to find that game nowadays. It's one of those games that EA just dropped and doesn't even put on their online store anymore.
It probably was a licensing issue, which is really,
Probably,
really
yeah.
a shame. Um, yeah, it's super frustrating because there are some games like that, and I hate it when I can't find a game, and it's a problem that I think we're going to face more and more, because there are just so many old games that sometimes, especially like some old Konami games, publishers that have just kind of either gone out of business or just gone into another business that don't put their stuff online anymore. I was trying to find Silent Hill 2 to play, and it's not available digital anywhere. And the only place that you can buy like an actual copy is on eBay or something like that, and it's like
Mm,
$400 for the disc, and it's just so annoying.
yeah.
Another game that I would highly recommend if you liked Godfather, if you like Mafia, if you like open world games, very underrated. Not a lot of people know about it. Also an EA game, The Saboteur. Did you ever play that or see that?
No, I'm not familiar.
Let's see. I've got a trailer here. This is uh this was such an interesting game back in the day. So they used a cool mechanic where they would it's set in World War II in France, and you play as a this sounds bizarre, but you play as a guy who's a race car driver that gets like caught up in this whole plot, that dealing with the Nazis and um, uh, German occupied France, and
I guess he
the
is really about the race.
yes. There's like Assassin's Creed type movement in this game where you can like climb up buildings. It's all open world, but one of the coolest things they did, you can see in the trailer, they had the game in black and white with like some color elements, and as
Oh,
you
cool.
would liberate different parts of the city, it would turn color. It was super super
Oh.
cool how they would do that, and
I never heard or seen anything of this
so
game.
many people haven't. It's
When is the game?
it's maybe like 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there.
Okay.
It's available on Origin. I think it's even free with Origin Access if you pay
I
like the
wonder if it
$5
may
a month
be
thing.
banned in Germany though. Sometimes some Nazi games they're finicky about, so
That's
maybe
true.
that's part of it.
Might be. Yeah.
Need to check
Yeah.
that
They
out.
they've relaxed a lot of that stuff though, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah. So, but maybe if it was
At the
at the
time when it
time,
was released.
maybe they
Yeah.
never bothered to put it up in the store. But I
That
don't know. Maybe I just haven't heard of it.
it's a super cool game. I wish more people would know about it and check it out. Highly recommend it.
Reminds me of one kind of like an adventure puzzle game called Prisoner of War. Super tough, but you play as a prisoner of war in World War II in one of the prison camps, and kind of have to just like puzzle your way out of things. Typical point and click. It's not really point and click, but like an adventure style tactics. I remember it being really, really tough, but it's kind of a fun game. I mean, fun as much as the scenario. That's it to be fun.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Mafia 3 as you continue through it. Let's see. Anything else?
Well, this Saboteur is available. I just see. Yeah.
Okay.
Or is it? Some weird. Oh, I need Origin access to get it, but so I can't buy it.
Wait, you can't just buy it? That's weird.
No, it's just part of this weird subscription thing. Interesting. Well, EA strikes again.
Why EA?
You have 300 DLCs for The Sims, but you can't let me buy this one game.
That's weird. You been playing anything else?
No, not really. I don't. I mean, I did continue with Mass Effect Andromeda, so still on that, but nothing really new there other than I have a good time with it, despite its flaws. And yeah, and my off time out of the park baseball.
Nice, managing all those baseball teams.
Sometimes successfully.
Well, let's see. I have been playing a little bit more Majora's Mask. I'm getting very close to the end of that. I think I could beat it right now if I wanted to, but I'm trying to actually collect all of the masks. So I've actually got some people in Discord helping me out with that because it's very...
I feel like you've been saying that you're close to finishing Majora's Mask for like 3 weeks.
I'm almost there, Akko. Yeah, I could beat it if I wanted to. I just need to find the masks, okay?
Sure.
It's honestly a really fun game though. I'm really enjoying it. The masks are very confusing how to find some of them because with the mechanics of this game where, you know, you're stuck in a time loop, there are certain events that you have to do and you have to do them like in correct orders, and you can only do like you know, one part of this on a certain day during a certain time at a certain place and all of this stuff. So it's a bit tedious, but it's pretty fun, and I'm enjoying that. Still playing Anno 2205. I'm actually still really enjoying that, despite my reservations that I've always had with it. It has just always been a little too simplistic. But for what it is, I'm enjoying it. It's just been kind of my late at night game that when I can't sleep or something like that, I just boot that up and play a little bit of that. I played a tiny bit of Monster Hunter World. I hadn't booted that game up in forever, but I had some people in Discord that wanted to play, and so I wanted to jump in, ask them if I could jump in with them, and I actually had fun with that. I like that game, but I also really find it very frustrating. There's just some things that I wish that I could change about it. I don't like the controls. The controls are very confusing to me. There's just some weird things like how you have to put away your weapon to pick something up, or like you can't run with your weapon. There's just so many little tedious things that annoy me a little bit, but it is fun. And I also feel like it's way more enjoyable playing it with people, because we had somebody that was quite a bit higher level than us, and like we were just blowing through monsters, whereas I always felt like I was struggling so much when I was playing by myself, especially on some of those. I would either die or I would run out of time. That was the biggest thing, because all of the hunts have a time limit on them, and it's like a 50-minute time limit. But I would spend so much time trying to kill this one monster and feel like I was almost there, and then I would run out of time and literally have to do the entire thing over again. But yeah, for just kind of a casual, fun, getting together with friends game, I think that game is pretty fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it playing multiplayer. So I don't I played it here and there a little bit on my own, but really, like it was fun playing it with other people.
Yeah, for sure. The big game though that I've been playing and absolutely loving has been Deus Ex: Human Revolution. So I have been wanting to. Well, I've really just been wanting to play like a sci-fi RPG for a long time. Um, and with Cyberpunk coming out pretty soon, I've really been itching for something like that. And man, I forgot how good this game is. So this game originally came out, I think it was like 2010, 2011. It was early 2010s. And I played it through when it first came out. Didn't know anything about the series, but I've basically forgotten everything about it, which is like the best thing ever. It's just to go back to a game and replay it after you've forgotten everything. And man, it is really good. It's one of these what they call immersive sims, which I don't really even know what that means. But it's a first person RPG with lots of mechanics that you can really just kind of immerse yourself in the world. It's got a really cool story, really cool characters. It's set in a futuristic Detroit, where you play as a guy that works for a company that builds prosthetics, like mechanized prosthetics. And it's got some really interesting, like ethical things that it brings up in the world. Whereas people are, changing their bodies and modifying their bodies, and there's certain groups that are very much against like modifying your body, or augmenting your body. They call it. And then there's the augs or the augments that are all for like swapping out your arm and swapping out neural implants to make yourself smarter. And there's even like some weird stuff about baseball teams and other sports. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. There's some interesting stuff that like they're discussing whether they should let augments play baseball, because obviously they will be able to throw the ball faster and swing the bat harder and faster and things like that. So it's just a really interesting world and really interesting characters, and really having a good time. Fantastic gameplay. You can play kind of any way you want to, but I feel like it's a little bit designed more towards stealth type gameplay, which I personally love. And yeah, I'm having a really good time with that.
Yeah, I always heard very good things about that game, and I know a lot of people are fans of the Deus Ex franchise in general. So never got around trying it out myself, but I only heard good things.
That's right. Vermont says in chat we spent about 3 hours trying to get a basketball shot, and we finally got it. I was a little overpowered with my augmented arms, but we finally got a basket. But yeah, I can't wait to continue that game. Having a blast with it. Let's see. What do you say we move on and talk about some of the news?
Okay.
First up, let's talk real quickly about some of the game releases. We've got today, July 17th, we've got some big games releasing. Drake Hollow. Don't know what that game is, but it's coming out for PC and Xbox One. But we have Ghost of Tsushima comes out for PS4 today. It's getting, I would say, positive to mixed reviews. It sounds like a lot of the people reviewing this game are really praising the combat and the open world and the environments, but saying the story is not really the greatest thing. I think it's like around mid 80s on Metacritic and OpenCritic, which is pretty good. I'm very curious to check it out. It looks like a beautiful game. I've actually already picked it up, so I'm gonna be checking that out soon. But I'm a little disappointed that it sounds like the story is not quite as good as I had hoped. And I also just think the marketing for that game was just a little weird. They didn't really, they always kind of skipped over like what the combat was. And when I first saw this game, I was like, oh, this looks like Sekiro or like, kind of a FromSoft game. But it turns out it's more kind of like it looks like, it sounds a lot like an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan.
I wonder if they wanted to be it more like Sekiro, but then Sekiro came out and they didn't want to be known as the Sekiro clone.
I don't think they did. I think that they wanted to go for a little bit more. I don't want to say simplistic combat, but just not so much of a technical and complex combat like a FromSoft game is. And I think that that's perfectly fine. Like, there's probably a bigger audience of people that's going to enjoy a little bit more simplistic type of combat. It still looks, and from what I'm hearing, is very good. It's just not that type of combat that is in a FromSoft game, which is perfectly fine. Not every game has to have Souls-like combat, as much as I want it to. But yeah, I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah, I may check out Ghost of Sashimi as well.
Sashimi.
I'll probably wait a little bit, but from what I've heard, like the few people that I've seen talk about, mostly positive, and sounds like a fun game to check out at some point.
It just looks so pretty, and honestly, if I can just walk around Japan and brush some leaves around, this game's got some beautiful leaf tech. I don't know what they call it, but it's got some beautiful leaves. Then that's all I care about. We also have Paper Mario and the Origami King launched today. That has been getting somewhat mixed reviews as well. I don't know anything about Paper Mario, never played them. I've heard some people are enjoying it, but a lot of people just say it's kind of like okay.
I haven't heard anything about it after release.
Yeah. So. It seemed like some people were really excited for that game. But after it's launched, it seems like most of the reviewers are just like, it was okay. Which for a Nintendo Mario game, I mean, I know it's not like a mainline Mario game, but I was a little surprised by that. I was expecting it to be a little...
Well, it sounded good on paper.
Let's see. We also have Into the Radius for PCs coming out on July 20th. Rock of Ages 3. That's a really fun game. I think that's it coming in early access, though, on July 21st. Carrion. Very excited for this game. Coming out on PC, Xbox One, and Switch on July 23rd, and it's coming to Game Pass. So if you have Game Pass, you'll get that included with Game Pass. And then Dying Light Hell Raid. I don't know if you know the story behind this. Did you ever play Dying Light? You are aware of the game, though, I'm sure, right?
Yes, I am aware. I haven't played it.
So Dying Light 2 is supposed to be coming out sometime. It was originally supposed to come out, I think, last year, and then delayed to early this year and into summer, and then it was like, we don't know when it's coming out, but we're working on it. But they're still putting out DLC for it, but this was originally announced like 10 years ago or something like that. And I think it was supposed to be a separate game, and then they just kind of integrated it. I guess they're using the Dying Light engine. They kind of integrated it into the Dying Light game, and now it's just kind of a DLC that's like a standalone game / story, but it's still required to have the base game to play it. So weird story, but I know people are pretty excited about that if you've been following it. That comes out July 23rd as well for PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Okay, so let's move on to a little bit.
Whoa! I thought about a little tidbit. Do you know which game came out on July 21st, 2010? So 10 years ago.
Ooh.
Let's see if you can guess it. Let's go with a yes and no question format here.
Okay. Was it an Xbox exclusive?
Let me check. Don't think so.
PlayStation exclusive?
No. Or
Was it
I think so.
multi-platform?
It might have been Xbox exclusive.
2010.
Seems so. Wouldn't get too hung up about it though. By now, it's available on all platforms.
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. Okay, give me another hint.
Another hint. Well, came out 10 years ago. It's it's more. I mean, if I give you too many hints, it's too easy.
Multi-platform. Is it a Bethesda game?
No.
Is it like a big publisher?
No.
Okay. Is it an indie game?
Yes.
Oh no, I'm really bad with
But
indie games back then.
You know 100%. Everyone knows it. Or at least has heard of it.
It's not Dark Souls, is it?
No.
I mean, that was kind of an indie game back then.
I mean, I guess.
I think that came out in 2011 anyway.
Yeah.
Is it a first-person shooter?
No.
Is it a side scroller?
To a degree, yes. I would say yes. Yes, it is.
You realize, like, I didn't play any indie games and hated side scrollers back then.
Well, yeah, but you don't have to play it to know it.
Okay, it's an indie game. It's a side scroller, 2010. Would I play this game with a mouse and keyboard or with a controller?
You kept probably both. I'm not sure. I played it with a mouse and keyboard.
It's a side scroller. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna hate myself when I find this out. It came out July 25th, right?
24th. The 21st.
21st.
Yes.
Is it from a well-known developer?
Well, not a big studio, but that developer, based on the success of this indie hit, made at least one more big hit as well. It's,
I have no idea.
Maybe someone in chat wants to guess.
It's not Minecraft, right?
No, it's not a side scroll. The game is 2D side scroller. Side scroller, yeah. There it is.
I just have no idea. I feel like the only game I played in 2010 would have been like Mass Effect. What else came out
Mass
in
Effect
2010?
2 came out in January 2010.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2. No, I don't think it would be Don't Starve. Don't Starve came out way after that.
Oh, Don't Starve is not correct. See if I can give you the developer name or if that reveals too much. Made by Playdead.
Wait, is it Limbo?
Yes, it's Limbo.
I cheated. I looked up 2010
come
games.
on.
I never would have guessed that though. I never even played that game. I can't believe that's 10 years old. I thought that game was like 5 years old.
Yeah, that's why I picked it.
That's interesting. Did you play Limbo?
I did play it last year or the year before.
Did you like it?
On stream.
I played it up to I played it up to the spider part, and then I couldn't figure out how to get past the spider, which is like 10 minutes into
Yeah,
the
I mean,
game.
I just found it very very frustrating.
Yeah.
I thought the style was really cool. I'm not a big jump and run guy anyway, and or platforming, and I just felt like, especially later on, it was a little too much a trial and error where you kind of had to die to figure out. Like you couldn't avoid certain things because you just couldn't have known that it would happen, and so it was frustrating that you then died. And although it doesn't set you back, it's just I don't know. I prefer at least having a chance to like getting through the things by paying attention. Whereas there was a lot of okay, like I don't know, like a platform just breaks away, which you couldn't have seen beforehand.
Yeah. I feel like were they bought by Microsoft,
Could be.
or are
I
they
don't know.
still independent?
I don't know.
I feel like I remember Microsoft saying that was one of the companies they bought. But yeah, I am curious to hear about their new game because I think they put out like a tiny teaser of something, and Inside was their last game, which was also very well received. But I don't know. I could never get into those games. They look really cool. I love the art style, and I think they're really interesting games. But I'm just too stupid to play those games. I can't. I'm not good at figuring out the puzzles and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I struggled with it as well.
Plan says wasn't Limbo more 2.5? No, I mean it kind of had like that. What do you call the background that like does that thing? Oh goodness, I'm completely blanking on the name. Vermalt probably knows. It's like a graphic design thing that the iPhone does. Like when you switch it
Overheat.
around. What'd you say?
Overheat.
Overheat. iPhone doesn't ever overheat. Anyway, oh my goodness, I can't think of what that's called. I'm gonna think of it eventually. Uh, let's move on. That is interesting though. I love trying to guess older games. That is such a hard game for me to guess because
I may come back to that quiz as long as you don't cheat again.
there's actually a really interesting website. Maybe this is what you were looking at, but there's a like this day in gaming history website.
No, I actually looked on Wikipedia.
Okay. Remind me to show you that website because that would be a fun thing for us to do like every week, like try and look up
Sure.
what came out, 10 years ago or something like that.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's move on to the news. We've got some good stuff to talk about. We had a couple of big announcements the day after our last podcast on Saturday of last week. Devolver did their weekly, or not weekly, yearly direct, and it was just as weird as it's always been. Devolver Digital, for I guess like the past 3 or 4 years, has been doing this really like meta, over the top, uh, direct style announcements of their game, or of their games, and I thought it was kind of cool for like the first 2 times they did it, but now it's just I don't know. People still seem to like it, but I thought it was just really, really cringy and just way, way too much. Regardless of that, though, they did actually announce some stuff. Let me pull it up. Did you watch any of this? Did you see any of this?
No.
So we'll just run through the stuff that they announced really quick. So they showed off Shadow Warrior 3. They showed off a trailer for that. Shadow Warrior 1 and 2 were pretty well received. Shadow Warrior 1, very highly received. And then 2 was very good, but it was more of a looter shooter, and people didn't really seem to love that. But yeah, it's a fun, just kind of silly, over the top, kind of shooter slash, I don't know how you describe this game. Japanese slasher game with swords and guns and all kinds of stuff like that. They showed off Fall Guys. That'll be coming out on July 23rd. Oh, I didn't even. That wasn't even on the release dates, but yeah, that's coming out July 23rd. Carrion also coming out July 23rd. They showed off a game. I don't even know how you pronounce this. Olija. It's coming to Nintendo Switch and PC. They just showed a little bit of this game. It's got a very kind of 8-bit art style or 16-bit. I always get these confused. I'll show the trailer here. The gameplay looks like it could be kind of fun, but I'm just not really a huge fan of this particular art style. I also don't really know what the game is or what it's about. I feel like so many trailers do this where they show off lots of cuts of the gameplay, but not really showing what exactly it is.
Yeah.
It just looks too simplistic to me, the actual art style. Like, I can't really even see what is going on in a lot of these scenes. Let's see. What else did they show off? They showed off Serious Sam 4, which a lot of people have been waiting for that. They didn't give a release date, just said it's coming out 2021. And then they announced what I think was honestly the coolest thing, which was what they called the Devolver Land Expo, which was a game, which it was a marketing game, I guess. So it was set up to be a kind of like a virtual expo center that you go to, and you walk around and you can actually like see the trailers for the game, and you explore kind of this abandoned convention center. And it was honestly really cool. Apparently they made this in 2 weeks. Show off some of the gameplay here. The game actually was really fun. I played it on stream. I mean, it was only about an hour long, but you just kind of walk through and explore this abandoned convention center, and there's these little robots that are wandering around that if they find you, they'll kind of like send you back to the start. So you have a t-shirt cannon that you're armed with to shoot them and to kind of stun them. And yeah, you just kind of go through, check out the trailers, check out the games, and then there's even a final boss at the very end of the game.
That's cool. I think that would be like a cool thing, like just in general, to have a kind of game announcement thing in form of a game. So basically,
Yeah,
that you play through the game and unlock the announcement and the trailers in the game.
this was honestly, in my opinion, this is just what they should have put out. Like, they should have just skipped the whole direct thing and just put this
Yeah.
out and let you just explore this and check out the trailers and the games and everything like that. I thought it was a
Yeah.
really, really cool idea, and really impressive that they made this entire thing in just 2 weeks. I thought that was just really, really impressive.
Yeah.
And that was about it for the Devolver Digital Direct. Very, very weird. I don't know. I don't really get that, get the way that they do that. But people seem to like it. I do like the games that they put out. So I was excited to get the announcements. The other announcement that we got the day after that on Sunday, Ubisoft Forward, they call it, showed off not a whole lot. So
I've heard.
I have very mixed feelings on this. The stuff that they showed was good. So they started out showing a rather lengthy. It was actually like a movie for or a short film, I guess, for Watch Dogs Legion. And everybody was a little confused at first, like, is this gameplay that we're seeing, or what is this really? But it turns out it was just kind of like a digital short movie, short film. And then they actually got into the gameplay and showing off a little bit more about the game. And I gotta say, this looks really, really good. I was a little skeptical when I first heard about Watch Dogs Legion. Um, there's the idea that you'll be able to recruit anybody, they say, and I still think that they're overselling this a little bit, because I imagine there's just going to be like 12 different personas or something like that, and yeah, you can recruit anybody you want, but there's going to be like the hitman, there's going to be the construction worker, there's going to be the old granny, and everything like that. And they might just change the character models or something for that a little bit. But what they showed off was just really, really impressive. Did you watch any of this or see any of this?
I saw a few bits and pieces, and yeah, it looks interesting. I haven't played any of the Watchdog games yet, but I do own now both the first and second one. I think they gave out the second Watchdogs for free if you did like a
They did,
thing
and
on.
they also immediately crashed their servers with everyone trying to
Yes.
claim that.
Yes, I think like a few people just got their free copy. But I mean, free copy of Watch Dogs 2, which as far as I know was pretty well received after the first one
Yeah,
received some mixed
so
reviews.
Watch Dogs 1, one of the biggest disappointments in gaming history. Watch Dogs 2, a pretty good game. No, there are some people that like Watch Dogs 1. I was just really
Can
disappointed.
you play Watch Dogs 2 without playing Watch Dogs 1, or do you have to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what? Can you do either this or that? Yes, for sure.
They are set in the same universe, but they're completely different characters. They're completely different settings. Watch Dogs 1 is set in Chicago, and it's a much more serious tone. The protagonist is a very just dry and unlikable character. But the second one, in my opinion, is really, really good. It's set in a fictionalized version of San Francisco, and the character is much more funny, much more upbeat, and there's some references to Watch Dogs 1, but not a whole lot that you need to know at all, really. Yeah, Watch Dogs 2 is a really good game.
I might then jump into Watch Dogs 2.
If you're getting into the open world games, it's really fun, really worth playing. But yeah, going back to Legion, I'm honestly pretty excited for this. I tell you, the main thing that got me excited was seeing the John Wick character. there's like we said, there's different characters. You can recruit anybody into your squad, so to speak. And there was a kind of hitman assassin type character that, I mean, is just straight up John Wick. Like, they even showed him going through a nightclub type environment that looked just like it was out of the movie, doing kind of the same moves and things like that. But honestly, it looked really cool. I don't know how well it's going to play. I hope it kind of, that's my biggest concern, is it looks really cool, but when I get my hands on it, it's going to look terrible. But there are some other interesting characters. There's like a construction worker that you can get that, he'll do things like assassinate people with nail guns and things like that.
Building a brick wall.
Yeah. And there are some really interesting things. I was worried that, or I was kind of curious about this, like, if you're just going to be able to like get one character and just kind of go through them through the whole game. And I think you can, but I think they designed it to be a little bit more like there's certain areas that will be easier to get in depending on what character you're using. So like there may be a construction site that you have to infiltrate to, I don't know, do something, and so you can switch over to your construction worker character and do that.
Granny only playthrough.
There's gonna be that, it.
Blending into the nightclub scene as old Margaret.
So they also finally showed off some actual gameplay for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And I gotta be honest, it looks good, but for them, as good as Odyssey looks, I don't know if this really looks any better. And I almost feel like this came off as a little more janky than Odyssey. Just some of the animations just looked not quite there, and I mean maybe it's just not finished. But it just, I don't know, it just, something about it just looked a little bit more janky, and especially for this to be like, I don't know if it's really going to be a launch title for the new consoles or if it's just like a cross-gen type thing, but I'm pretty sure that this is coming out around next gen, and you would think that they would be, I don't know, just showing off a little bit more of the details that you would think next gen would be showing off. With that being said, I mean, it looks really good. It doesn't look like an Assassin's Creed game at all, but I don't know if that's really a bad thing.
Well, and I mean, by now the question is, what is an Assassin's Creed game? And we have different, like we talked about last week, we have basically different generations of Assassin's Creed games. I think you have the up until Assassin's Creed 3, then you have kind of 4 more or less as a standalone, then you have Unity and Syndicate, and then you have Origins and Odyssey, and probably now Valhalla kind of more in that generation as well. So I think it's more that we just deal with different generations. There really is no Assassin's Creed game that spans like over all the games, aside from them some main story beats of that you kill people.
Yeah, and I don't know a single person that likes the stupid animus and dealing with all of that stuff.
As someone in my chat actually enjoys the like current time storyline, and I always felt like the issue with it is like either give me more of that so it actually feels important, or cut it out completely.
That's the thing, because like in the original ones, it was really cool because it was like it was like you were playing a current time game where you were actually going back in time using your ancestors' memories to help this organization. And now it's just like every time that stupid animus comes up, I'm like, I just want to go back to the game and just play the game. I don't want to deal with this stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the actual gameplay from like a Viking game looks really cool. So I'm pretty excited for that. Also, I want to mention, this is a little odd to me. So Watch Dogs Legion, they put a date on all of these games, actually. They put a date on Watch Dogs Legion for October 29th. And then Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I think, is coming out like 2 weeks after that. And then we also have Cyberpunk, which is coming out like right around the same time that Valhalla is coming out. I think that Valhalla and Cyberpunk, like, even though they're coming out about the same time, I don't think that that's going to hurt either one of those games. But I do really see it hurting Watch Dogs, because Watch Dogs is like very much an open world kind of cyberpunk universe that you're in. It's not full on cyberpunk, but it's more of like a futuristic version of London. And I just feel like for, you know, the kind of gamer that is only going to buy like 1 or 2 games, if they're going to see Cyberpunk versus Watch Dogs, they're both open world games, they're both kind of futuristic sci-fi games, they're probably going to go with Cyberpunk. And so I don't know, it's kind of an odd decision to put that date so late in the calendar. But I mean, you know, it was also originally supposed to come out earlier this year, so
but so did Cyberpunk. So
that's true too. Yeah.
Over the place. I would, based on that, I would hazard to guess that Valhalla won't come out on that date. I will say they.
You think it's going to be delayed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For like, I will say for another month. I will say Valhalla will come out end of November. Just why not?
I can't remember what the actual date is, because I think it's like mid-November. So if they pushed it a month, it would be like mid-December, and that would be a really weird date.
True.
Let's see. November 17th is when that is slated for. I think they're going to hit that date whether they're ready or not.
Probably. Yeah, I think it's probably likely that with Assassin's Creed they don't give a shit, just push it out. Whereas I think with Legion, there's a better chance that they actually look for a little bit of quality control because people are already probably more on the fence about it than with Assassin's Creed. So they kind of
Well,
have to
here's the
present.
thing for Assassin's Creed. They they took a year off because Odyssey didn't come out last year, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Did it?
I mean, I think it did not come out last year. But
Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Okay, yeah, it came out
yeah,
October 2nd, 2018, and they decided to take a year off, which traditionally has been kind of a yearly franchise, which is honestly
yeah.
insane that they they create those games. I mean, it's not the same team, but it's still insane that they have been putting those games out every year. So it was kind of a big deal that they took a year off. So they have definitely had more time to work on Valhalla. They also said there were like 13 different um, sections in Ubisoft um, that were working on that game. So I don't even know how many people are working on that game. So I say all that to say that I feel like they are pretty committed with that date. I still wouldn't be surprised if it was delayed, but I feel like the chances of that getting delayed are pretty low.
I
Um,
wonder. I wonder if the situation with Watch Dogs is actually that they like the date that they have now is the date where they think they will have finished it, but they cannot delay it further because they already delayed it to that
yeah,
point. I'm
that's
not
the
hesitant
thing.
about it because it would actually like it would probably make more sense to delay it to early next year to like, have a as an after holiday game. Um, but then again, maybe like a couple of weeks or a month before Cyberpunk is actually enough.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm definitely curious on checking it out.
The
Um,
last couple of months of the year will be a Shark Tank anyway for games. Like there's so
it's
much
gonna
that would
be just a
hit.
madhouse
Yeah.
because I feel like as soon as we have so many games that do not have release dates on them for this later this year, because I feel like everyone is waiting to get the actual dates of next gen titles.
I'm sure
Um,
we will get them eventually.
So Plan is saying something interesting in chat. He's saying that one thing is for sure, AC Valhalla will be huge. They try to outscale themselves with every game. I don't think that this game is actually supposed to be bigger than Odyssey. I think that they have scaled it back a little bit, which I think is a good thing.
Oh yeah.
I think that they're trying to make it a little bit more contained. I mean, it's still going to be huge, but Odyssey was just massive.
I just wonder if I mean if it is as big or bigger than Odyssey, I kind of want to at least walk to my hometown. It should be
Yeah,
regionally possible.
yeah. Let's see. They showed off some mobile games. They showed off Brawlhalla. Don't care anything about it. Um, sorry if you like mobile games. It just didn't look like it was for me. They showed off. This kind of breaks my heart. They showed off Tom Clancy's Elite Squad, which is a mobile game that takes a massive roster of 70 characters spanning the Tom Clancy universe, including Sam Fisher, which everybody has been wanting a new Splinter Cell game. And they were like, hey, you remember Splinter Cell? You remember Sam Fisher? He's in a mobile game now. I don't know. It hurt. It hurt because I don't have any problem with them creating mobile games. I don't even have any problem with them creating like a spin-off mobile game for a big franchise like Fallout did with Fallout Shelter, or even Hitman did with Hitman Go, Tomb Raider did that kind of stuff. I just wish they would tell us something about a real Splinter Cell game, because everyone is waiting for that, and we all have hopes for that. They also showed off Hyperscape, which is in open beta right now. It's a battle royale.
Oh yes, we need more of those.
You can't get enough of them. This one is a more of a futuristic battle royale set in more of like an urban environment. I will admit it looks pretty cool, and they put a lot of work into this. They even put like all of this detail into like the story of the characters and all of this. But my problem with this stuff is it's always like it looks so cool, but it just, I don't know. I guess I just don't like battle royales that much.
Well, I think at this point there are so many battle royales out there that already have an established fan base that you need something about your game that really puts you apart, and more than just the setting, I guess. And I don't know if they have that.
It's a very competitive environment right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in open beta. I think you can play it for free right now if you want to check it out. And then so sadly this leaked, but they ended with a trailer for Far Cry 6. And it was not gameplay or anything. It was just a cinematic trailer showing off what is this guy's name? I always say it wrong. Giancarlo? Is that how you say that?
Yeah,
Giancarlo Esposito. Most people know him better from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
Mandalorian also.
Mandalorian, yep. But yeah, he seems to be the villain, and he was talking to his son. I guess this is his son. It's set in kind of like it looks like maybe like a fictionalized Puerto Rico or something like that, where the city is in unrest.
I have to put on my wild speculation glasses for this, because I already
here we go.
heard a conspiracy theory about the game, and I want to hear about your take on it, since you are the Far Cry expert here.
Okay.
So I heard, and that is all just based on a screenshot and the observation of an eyebrow, that the little kid is actually Vaz from Far Cry 3.
From Far Cry 3.
Yeah, because he also kind of has like a scar or something there.
I heard that as well, and I think that the whole rumor came from the guy that played Voss saw the trailer, and somebody was asking him about Voss, and he was like, yeah, Voss was a pretty cool character. And that's like the only thing that happened, and the internet just went wild because of that. I don't think that this is Voss. First of all, Giancarlo calls him Hugo in the trailer. So unless they're just like hiding his name, or like he changes his name or something, I don't know. That just wouldn't really make sense to me.
Second name, Hugo Vaz.
Hugo Voss, whatever the last name of this other guy is.
Yeah. Hugo Vaz Chavez.
The other thing is, like, this is clearly a modern day setting. Like they had cell phones, and he was listening to like his iPhone, iPod, or something like that. And Far Cry 3 takes place in like, when was it? Like 2006, 2007, something like that. So I don't know. I don't think that it's Voss. I wouldn't really. I guess maybe you could like grow up a little bit and play as Voss. I personally wouldn't really want to play as Voss, though. I thought he was an okay villain. I think that Far Cry 3 is always a little overrated. I personally loved Far Cry 3, but to me, like, it was really good, but I didn't think it was that amazing. The acting was pretty well done. The gameplay was fun, but it wasn't anything really revolutionary, I didn't think.
Well,
I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe it's not a conspiracy, but a far cry from it.
And off go the shades. I think we should. I think this should be like a weekly segment though, where we
I
have
think so
like
too. Yeah.
Akko's speculation or something like that. They did put a date on this, February 18th, 2021. Chances of that being delayed, I'm gonna say 78%.
I would say only like a 45% because that is their usual release date for Far Cry things, and I don't see why it would change. They hit that the last year, so
Yeah. That's the only thing that's like keeping me from not rating it higher. But I don't know. Every game gets delayed. And then that was it. They wrapped up the announcements, and I gotta say, I'm pretty underwhelmed with the overall Ubisoft Forward announcement. I mean, the stuff that they showed looked really cool, particularly AC Valhalla, Watch Dogs Legions, and Far Cry 6. But they just left me wanting to know so much more, and not like in a good way, because they didn't say anything about Gods and Monsters, which that was the really cool kind of Zelda-looking game that was supposed to come out earlier this year. That game was even like semi-leaked on Stadia. There was like a developer version that was leaked on Stadia a few months back that somebody showed off actual gameplay, like it was a fully working game.
so nobody
And
saw it.
what did you say?
So nobody saw it. It doesn't say.
Yeah. Well, nobody would have seen it if the guy didn't record it and upload it to YouTube. But I don't know. It's just really disappointing because like that game was supposed to come out earlier this year. I would have loved to just hear something about it. I would have really expected that game would have gotten a release date of like August or something like that. Really surprised that we
Launch title for the PS5, so they wait for that.
I feel like they're gonna announce that date, and then like every other game is gonna be like, "Hey, we're a launch title for PS5 and Xbox One."
You always plan to release on that day.
We also didn't hear anything about Rainbow Six Quarantine. That was the game that was shown off last year, which was like a kind of a co-op Rainbow Six game. We didn't hear anything. We haven't heard anything. I don't know how long it's been.
Biggest marketing missed opportunity of a lifetime for Rainbow Six Quarantine to not release it during the quarantine.
I know, right?
Like there's once in a lifetime where we have a global pandemic where everyone is in quarantine and they have a game scheduled called Quarantine and they don't manage to bring it out during quarantine.
We didn't hear anything about Beyond Good and Evil 2, which that game was announced like 4 years ago. And I don't know, they didn't say anything about it last year. I mean, we know it was very early in development. I think it was like basically in the planning phases when they announced it. Obviously way too early to announce a game. But I hate when they just go silent on this kind of stuff, because for all we know, those games could just be canceled, and I wish they would just at least tell us if they are. We also haven't heard anything about that. I can't remember the name of it. It's like the pirate game that Ubisoft was making.
Yeah.
Anybody remember the name of that? R
pirate stuff.
Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
Didn't hear anything about that. According to Wikipedia, it says sometime after March 2021.
Thank you.
So yeah, they did say that they're going to have another one of these Ubisoft Forwards. So I don't know. Maybe this is just the thing now that all of these publishers are just going to have an announcement every 3 months, 3 to 4 months, and just announce stuff. Honestly, if that's the case, like I would be down for that. Maybe this is just a weird transition phase that we're going to go through, that is going to, just take some time to kind of get through these boring announcements and kind of lower our expectations even more. but I mean, if they're going to come out like every 3 to 4 months with some updates on some of these games, and tell us a little bit more about maybe some unannounced games, then I would be okay with that. I just think they've done such a bad job at setting expectations and just communication in general.
I wonder if some of the big publishers also kind of gamble on waiting when big events are able to happen again to make some of the big announcements, or save up some of the big announcement for then, kind of like waiting up. Well, we could announce this now, but in the hopes that, for example, the Game Awards happen as usual, we much rather than have a full lineup there.
I think yeah, that's a lot of it. Like, there's just so much unknown right now as far as events and announcements, and I think all of these publishers are scrambling, all of these developers are scrambling, trying to just put something together, figure out how to announce their stuff. I'm sure there's big companies and big publishers like Microsoft uh, um, and Sony that are trying to pull third-party games for their announcements, and it's just kind of a mess right now. So yeah, we'll see what's going on with that. Hopefully, we'll find out some more information. I really just wanted to hear about Gods and Monsters because that game looks really, really cool, and I hope that game is still coming out. I hope we get to actually play that at some point.
Yeah, hope so too.
Let's see. I've got just a couple of other quick news things that I'll throw out. No Man's Sky. You ever heard of that game?
Yeah, now does like horror and stuff, right?
Yeah. So they have a new update that just launched today. It is called Desolation, and it looks pretty cool, actually. This is again a free update. They just continue pumping out these free updates.
Like we said before, it's like as messed up as their start was, but you can't really blame them for what they did afterwards. They really put in some very good work, expanded on the game, and I mean, by now it pretty much delivers. I mean, not on the extreme promises that were made, but I think if the game would have come out back then like it is now, I think people would be pretty hyped about it, and people would talk about the game in general way differently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this update looks pretty cool. You get to explore abandoned space stations and ships, and the interiors. They're kind of showing off this, continuing with the procedurally generated or procedurally generation tech. The interiors of the ships are procedurally generated, so they're always going to be different when you find the ships. It looks very
cool if there is like a 1% chance or whatever. Like there's a certain percentage of chance whenever a ship is created that there's a xenomorph from aliens in there. Like you have like, and you just get killed.
I was gonna say that it would be really cool if there was like a like a small chance that you run into some kind of alien or something like that. I mean, maybe there is. I don't know. This looks pretty cool. It says uncovering the freighter's secrets won't be easy. All of these derelicts are full of danger. As the crews fled, systems failed, the lights are off, life support and gravity are offline. The security AI has gone haywire. So maybe not like a full-on xenomorph, but maybe more like AI robots and things like that.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, it looks cool. Every time I see one of these updates, I'm like, I kind of want to try it out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's out today. Let's see. Valve employees say they want to build a full-scale non-VR Half-Life game. So
I'm sure they want to.
Yeah. They probably wanted to for a long time.
I mean, I do too, but like
yeah, I think this is kind of focusing more on the new team at Valve, the people that worked on Alex. There's a lot more talk about where the franchise heads from here. And Alex was really well received. even though it was only VR, there were a huge amount of people that played that game and really, really enjoyed it. So I think maybe Valve was testing the waters a little bit. There's a really interesting video documentary type thing that you can watch on Steam that is the Final Hours, which is the Jeff Keighley produced kind of in-depth view of the Half-Life games. I think he's done this for all of them. And so there's one for Half-Life Alyx now that goes into a little bit more detail about the game, and also has some interesting... I haven't watched it all, but I've read a little bit about it, and it has some interesting discussion about how close they were to coming out with Half-Life 3 and all the different versions of Half-Life 3 that they had and things like that. So definitely interesting to check out.
I think, though, instead of Half-Life 3, here's what I want from Valve and surrounding Half-Life. It's
Half-Life
time...
Alyx Episode 1.
That as well. No, but I want a Half-Life Portal crossover. Since there's already the connection between Aperture and Black Mesa, they are like rivaling.
Yeah. I mean,
like, it would be cool, like to just create something along, like just scrap all the old Half-Life stuff. We know we won't get Half-Life 3 anymore. Alyx was fine. Let's wrap it up with that. Stop it. Just give us a game that kind of connects these two and like kind of builds into a new franchise.
Yeah, so that's what a lot of people...
Port Life.
Port Life. That's what a lot of people thought might happen with so when Portal 1 came out, like there was a little Easter egg at the end that kind of showed that it was in the Half-Life universe. And then Portal 2 came out and kind of expanded on that a little bit more, and everybody, kind of assumed that we were going to get Portal 3, but Valve just doesn't know how to make threes. So everybody was kind of hoping that, Portal 3, that's what it would be. Like it would dive into that lore a little bit more and show off a little bit more of the universe and everything like that. I still hope we get another Portal game. Portal is so good. And
would you prefer Half-Life 3 or Portal 3?
That's a really good question.
You can only get one in your lifetime. Like one will be guaranteed in your lifetime. Whenever it is, it will be fully polished, all efforts in, but it's either Portal 3 or Half-Life 3.
If it's like a full game, not like an episodic type thing, but like a full game with like a good story, beginning, middle, and end, I would prefer Half-Life 3. Because Portal is fantastic, but at the end of the day, like it's just a fun puzzle game to me. Whereas Half-Life, like I love that universe, and I love the lore and everything about that world, and I just want more of that. So yeah, I would go with Half-Life over Portal if I could only have one. What about you?
Yeah, probably the same.
Have you played any of the Half-Life games?
No, but I watched them.
Okay.
And I played at least some of Portal 1 and 2. So yeah, I mean they are great games, and I agree. I mean a full-fledged, like if we would dream about like what proper Half-Life 3 would look like, I mean it would be probably a pretty big endeavor. And as Half-Life 1 and 2 kind of push boundaries of the gaming industry and the genre and really revolutionize a lot of things, or at least like really were milestones in gaming history, you would want 3 to be the same. And if we say it's full effort and like it's a great successor, having that milestone again would be fantastic. I always am of the mind that if they ever plan on doing Half-Life 3 and like a full thing, they should just not announce it and just one day release it
Just
and show it on
shadow
the
drop
Steam
it.
page. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that because that would such an amazing marketing move. Everyone would like it would spread over the internet like a wildfire. Everyone would download it immediately without even knowing any reviews or any stuff like that. People would just pay the $60 or $100 or whatever they would charge for that. Just download it, play it immediately, and it would be probably the biggest commercial hit in gaming
It
history.
would, yeah. I mean, they,
Because if they announce it beforehand, then the expectation
yep.
rise and the questions and what will it be about and all of that. But if they just shadow drop it and be like, here, Half-Life 3, 40-hour game, have fun. We charge you $80. Everyone
I
would.
always want a big game to do that. Like I've always wanted, like, you know, Rockstar to just drop GTA 6 out of nowhere. You know, the next Zelda game just all of a sudden, hey, it's out. Yeah, I don't know why more companies don't do that, honestly.
It's just such a big risk. I think you can really like the ones that you named are almost the only ones that could do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
that's the thing.
maybe
Like,
by now you could do like a Witcher 4. They could
yeah,
probably do that because that has the same like name value as well. But there is like only a handful of franchises and titles that would be able to do that without risking too much of a marketing loss. So I mean, pre-orders, ODM certainly plays into it as well. But I think again, like if you're as big as a Half-Life 3 would be, if you're as big as like a New Zelda, especially if there's a long time in between games and people just wondering where's the next one, or if it's a shadow drop, Witcher 4, or yeah, GTA 6, that is certainly up there. It would still sell. It would still sell amazingly, and because that is a game like you don't need to know anything about it, and you know that most gamers would be interested in it, because also the track record of quality is so high that you kind of blindly trust them, even though you shouldn't. But because at some point they will disappoint us with something. But so far, if you like GTA, like there's just a level of quality where you know like, oh, maybe it's not my favorite GTA, but it will at
yeah,
least be very good. And the same with the Half-Life. Like, nobody is complaining about Half-Life 2 or like even the episodes. People like, the only complaint is that there's no Half-Life 3. That's the only
yeah.
complaint, that they don't get more of it. Kind of the same with Zelda. So I think you need that track record, you need the big name values to even be known for like casual gamers, and that's really only a handful of titles who could do that. But I think at some point we will get that, and Valve would be perfect to do that because they have the store. They own one of the biggest gaming store platforms, so they could just do it.
I mean, they almost did that with Alex. So they announced that in December, and it came out
Yeah,
in March.
yeah.
Um, and so one of the biggest problems with that is leaks. All of that stuff almost always gets leaked, and the longer you wait, the higher the risk is that it leaks. Especially when you try to do things like, here we go.
Conspiracy segment number 2. What if they only released Alex to kind of mask the actual development of Half-Life 3? Because
there there
every leak
there is a
would
lot of
then be like,
speculation
yeah,
about
no,
that. Yeah,
that is from Alex. So that is why we have these concept art and all of that. But in actuality, they have been working on Half-Life 3, and they knew that some sneaky weasel got some information, so they were forced to create a VR game, and they just threw it out and were like, okay, here, have at it. And the real thing will be on the day of release of the PS5 and Xbox, they decide to shadow drop Half-Life 3, and both Sony and Microsoft go out of business.
what if I wish I had the glasses. What if Half-Life 3 is actually in Half-Life Alex and nobody has actually
Oh,
found it yet?
that
What if there's just like a
that would be really
door in Alex, and like you open the door and you step into Half-Life 3?
Or maybe there's like a crystal lizard, like a crystal facehugger that you need to be hugged from.
Yeah.
And then he kind of sucks you into Half-Life.
Yeah, it's like Dark Souls levels DLC where you have to like figure out how to do this one thing, to do this other thing, to get into this one thing, to collect this one item, to unlock this one door that transports you into another level, and then you figure out a puzzle, and you have to play through all of Portal 1 and 2, and then you have to play through it backwards and listen to GLaDOS sing backwards, and then it gives you an unlock code for Half-Life 3.
Maybe it is.
I think that's what it is. Just nobody's found it. Yep.
Yeah. Listen and subscribe to the podcast. Here you get the biggest scoops on how to play Half-Life 3.
Xbox One X and Xbox One S have been discontinued ahead of the Xbox Series X. My goodness, these names are terrible. Microsoft officially confirmed that the Xbox One X and One S are officially discontinued, which seems a little early to discontinue them. I mean, it seems like they still could sell a few more, but I mean, I guess they're still on the shelves. You just might have a little bit harder time buying them or finding them. Also, more console news. This is interesting. So, Sony was originally planning to ship between 5 and 6 million units of the PS5. They have now upped that to, they are aiming for shipping 10 million PS5 consoles by the end of 2020.
They also watched the Xbox conference.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, these guys don't have a chance. We need to order some more." So here's the thing that I think is really interesting about that, and this is, again, I wish I had the glasses. Put on the conspiracy glasses.
I put them on for you.
Thank you. So everyone is thinking that this game, or that this console is going to be pretty expensive. I mean, people are saying minimum $500, maybe $600 for the PS5. I was kind of in the same boat, but I feel like if they are ordering that many consoles, if they're expecting to sell through, or not even sell through, but if they are shipping 10 million of these consoles and expecting to ship 10 million by the end of this year, that's only like maybe a month and a half or so that they're going to have to sell these. I think that could be good news, that maybe this is not quite as expensive as we think it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be more like a $400, $450 console compared to the really high price tag.
The version is significantly cheaper than the.
That would be interesting too, right? If it was like $300 for the digital edition, and $500 or something like that for the.
Have they confirmed that every other specs are the same? Because maybe,
I don't think so.
They have like because then you could maybe do like, okay, the digital version, like the quote unquote true gamers will then get the disc version anyway, and they pay the $500. But for the general audience, you then have the digital only, maybe just a smaller save space and all of that, the small memory. To then ship it for $300, kind of like the Switch Lite version, in a way, where it's like, okay, you get the same, like, obviously it's an upgrade to the PS4 in all ways, but maybe not as much memory, maybe like saving on those kind of things, or on peripherals or something like that.
Digital version comes with like a 1 gigabyte hard drive or something like that.
Yeah, but maybe just like 500 gigabytes, or like even less, like 250, and it's like smaller, and it's kind of like they release like a slim version anyway, like a year or two out. Maybe it's already that, where they just cut a lot of costs and unnecessary things for especially casual gamers, whereas then, like, if you and I would want to, we probably would get the big one, because we know that we need all the other shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I just want to know when these things are coming, how much they're gonna be. I'm so sick of just seeing Jeff Keighley blow into the controller and
Like he has
press
never
press the
never
buttons on the
controller
controller.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to know more information, but I did find that interesting that they upped the shipments by quite a bit, almost twice as much.
Yeah.
Microsoft Flight Simulator is coming out in August, I think it is. They have a 10-disc physical version that they are shipping.
Bless them. I mean, that is so crazy that I actually commanded. Like, that's great.
Do you remember? I don't know if you ever bought PC games back in the day, and I know some console games were like this, but I remember getting I can't remember what game it was, but there were like 6 CDs, like CD-ROMs, 700 megabyte CD-ROMs to the game disc. I think it was one of the Call of Duty games. It was like Call of Duty 2 or something like that. They were like
I think
6
I never
discs.
had that because I never had like a super gaming PC, but I think the most that I had was like 3 CDs.
Yeah.
To install. 3 or 4.
And the crazy part is, so this is it's 10 discs, which is 85 gigabytes of data, but the actual requirements are 150 gigabytes. So I think you still have to download like another 70 gigabytes or something like that. So yeah, I just thought that was pretty interesting, pretty funny. Okay, let's see. I tell you what, let's take a little break. Let's take like a 5-minute break, and then let's jump into a couple of questions. If anybody in chat has any questions, feel free to drop them in chat as well, and we will answer those, and then we'll have wrap it up
also
with our
on the
game of the year
podcasting platforms. If you have any question for future episodes or just in general, leave them in comment sections below. We will get to them eventually.
That's right. I also want to get a maybe an email set up for us so that we can have that on the iTunes and Spotify and everything like that. It might be a little bit easier for people to reach out to us that way. But yeah, we will come back and we'll go through a couple of questions, and then we will mention a couple of games for our Game of the Generation discussion, and we will wrap it up then. All right. Thank you all for being here. We will be right back, guys. And we are back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, Akko. Let's see. Let's jump into a couple of questions. First question is from Akko Sambo. You want to read your question?
I need to pull it up first.
Sorry, I should have warned you.
It's okay. It's okay. Can roll with the punches. Okay. Oh yeah. Now I remember my own question. That is good. The question originates from a video I watched. It kind of talked mostly about the latest Gears of War, and I haven't played it, and I don't know if that is accurate for the game, but that is neither here nor there. But my question is, if you think that game releases specifically for streaming services or like for subscription services like Game Pass might impact the quality of games that we get. Kind of like we see it with some of the streaming service movies, like for Netflix, that because the audience is a little more forgiving with the quality, because you don't go out into the theater, pay $15 for a ticket, and then the movie sucks and then you're upset. People are like, oh, I'm paying $10 for Netflix anyway, so if this movie is kind of like a 6 out of 10, well, whatever. So do you think that that could happen with games as well?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because game subscription services are becoming such a big thing now. We have Game Pass, which I think would probably be the biggest one, but Ubisoft has theirs, and EA with Origin has theirs, and even Sony kind of has one that's not very good, but they have one. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I guess now that I think about it, maybe that could be something to be a little worried about. Um, I don't feel like it has necessarily affected anything so far, but at the same time, like, I have Game Pass, and I absolutely do not judge a game as harshly because it's on Game Pass, because it's like, well, I pay $5 a month for this. I can boot up this game. Carrion comes out on July 23rd, and I can for sure tell you that I'm not going to judge that game nearly as harsh as if I had gone out and paid whatever the full price for that is, probably $20 or $30. I mean, that's a smaller indie game, so it's probably not as big of a deal. I tell you one that is a bigger deal. Gears Tactics. So, if I had paid $60 for that game, I think I would have been a little disappointed, because I was really hot on that game at first and really, really enjoying it. But I fell off of it. It started to get a little bit repetitive. But, no big deal, because I didn't pay for it. I paid $5 a month, and it was just included in that. But with that being said, I don't feel like it was. I don't feel like the developers made this thinking that, oh, this is going to Game Pass, so we, don't need to put as much effort into this and everything like that. But I guess the question is more like, could this become a problem? And I guess I could see it being an issue. But man, I don't know. We're kind of going into uncharted territories with all of these subscription services. I can tell you that personally, I love the subscription services. Just looking at Ubisoft's subscription service, I don't subscribe to it right now, but that's just because there's not any Ubisoft games that I want to play right now that I don't already own. But when Watch Dogs Legion and Assassin's Creed Valhalla both come out within a month, so I'm going to pay $15, play through both of those games, and then just cancel my service. And that is an incredible value for me, as somebody that just wants to play those games on launch, but not pay a full $60 for it. But yeah, as to the actual question, I don't really know. I'm curious what your thoughts on it, though.
Well, it's hard to tell, and I went back and forth on it because I can also see basically a positive effect stemming from the same thing, and that would be that developers that work specifically for those subscription services have a little more freedom to experiment because the drop off is not as high, because they know that even if it doesn't quite work out what they wanted to do, at least they won't be criticized as harshly as they would have if they would have just released it normally. So it might also just give them a little more freedom to experiment, especially with already established franchises where the expectation is high anyway, kind of like it would be for Gears of War. If they would, I think Gears Tactics is a good example there, to just try it and to kind of just see how people receive it. But I agree that the risk would be higher if they would just release it normally. But with Game Pass, they can maybe try it out a little bit and try out different avenues or different mechanics for new games that they otherwise would have been hesitant about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. What are your thoughts on just kind of the game subscription services in general? Do you subscribe to any?
No, I don't. Not at the moment. But it's mostly because I don't really like. I don't have an Xbox, and my ability to play PC games is a little bit limited. So that is holding me back from Game Pass, which is currently, I think, the best one of those services. I think if I would have the similar thing, like if I would have a Game Pass on the PlayStation, I would certainly do that, because, or like that would like bring the same kind of value as well. Then I would be much more inclined to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think the issue that I see with that is that in the end, it's also nice to just own a game and even if you're not subscribed to something, when you're not continually playing something, and just go back to a game that you really like. So I would. It's kind of a tough one. I probably would get used to just using those streaming services or just subscription services, just like I would get used to watching Netflix or so. But in the end, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, because I think then eventually it will go somewhere like we have it now with shows and movies, that you have then a bunch of different services, and then you have to pay for 5 different services each month anyway, and then you pay the $60 again. So you end up paying the same thing, because you have to be subscribed to multiple services to actually get the games that you want to get. So I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. So I guess what I would say is, I guess as long as we have like the publishers themselves putting out these subscription services, then I'm not too worried. Maybe if we had like kind of a third party, which this would probably be really, really hard to do, and probably not even likely just because of business type things. But if there was like a third party service that, you know, you pay $10 a month and you get like various types of games, that could start to become convoluted as to, you know, what games are where. And I mean, to a degree, it already is like that, because on Microsoft Game Pass, they have a bunch of third-party games on there. You don't just get the first-party games; you get third-party games as well. And there have already been games where there was a game that I literally bought in the Steam sale, and then like 2 days later, it came out on Game Pass, and I was like, "Well, shoot, should I just refund this game and just play it on Game Pass?"
Yeah.
But for me, what I do is I like having the subscription services for games that first come out. You know, first party games for EA, Ubisoft, Microsoft. I can play all of those day on date when they release. And then if I really like the game, then I might go back and actually purchase it. And the nice thing, especially about PC games, is they drop in price so quickly that, especially with Ubisoft, I mean, I can guarantee you Watch Dogs Legion is probably going to be like $20 2 or 3 months after it releases. You know, same thing with Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. That's just the way they do those. And I wouldn't want to pay, you know, $60 for that game to play when it first comes out, and then to just finish it, and then 2 months later it dropped half price. So I feel like it's a really good compromise right now, but I can totally see it going in a different direction. And yeah,
I
that
think we
does.
could also be like just one step away, where we have like more games that are then exclusively for streaming.
So
We're
that's
just
what I would
or like
really be
streaming, like
worried
the
about.
subscription
Yeah.
services, because once the different services start to rise and want to promote their thing, you will see like, oh, this, I don't know, let's just say the next Gears of War 6 is only available on Game Pass. You can't buy it as a singular game, to lure people in to get those streaming services, or I'm already saying streaming services, but subscription services. So I think then it becomes a little bit of an issue for me personally.
Yeah. I don't think that they would ever do that, though, because why would they do that? Because
To push their service, like if you have something like Ubisoft, you know that you bring out like 2 3 AAA games a year. You have lots of smaller games, and you just focus on your platform, on your own platform. You don't have any second party stores anymore. You just go over your Uplay streaming
but they could still
subscription
sell the
thing.
game on Uplay.
Yeah, but in the end, I guess like the steady revenue stream is something they would look for.
I think I'm just very different from people. I know that a lot of people subscribe to these services and then just like forget about them or just like, don't end up canceling. I'm like very adamant about whenever I sign up for a service. Like I literally go into my calendar and like mark the day before expires to like, go in there and turn it off so it doesn't bill me again. So maybe I'm just very different about that. But I feel like I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. I hope it never happens that like there will only be a game that is available on a streaming service. I hope that you can always buy the game outright.
Can we clip that just in case we have to play that in like half a year?
You will never not be able to buy a video game. Are you crazy? Yeah, that's an interesting question though. For anybody that just was coming in, I'll ask it again because I know we just had some new people come into chat. So Akko asked, do you think subscription-based models for gaming, like Game Pass, also like EA Origin, Ubisoft, could impact the quality of games produced specifically for that service? I think that's an interesting question. Next up, we have Pie Manding, who asked, I like this question too. How do you feel gameplay and story elements should combine? Do masterpieces have to have both elements, or can one be foregone?
I think the general rule there probably is that the more a quote unquote masterpiece focuses on just one of the two aspects, the more it has to stand out. Because if it's just gameplay, it has to be the gameplay. And if it's just story and like really just a walking simulator, it has to be the story to really stand out as a masterpiece. Whereas I think it's a little bit easier to mix those two in similar fashion. But then again, like you see something like Dark Souls, to get back to that game. But I mean, to be honest, like the story, while there, and yes, there is a lot of lore and blah, 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 but the story is really not the focus there. Like the story aspect there is very little. It's mostly about the gameplay and about the world design, but not about a story that is told, even if it's there. So I think there you see an aspect where it's really, really gameplay heavy. And then you have other games where it's certainly more story heavy. Like if we say, for example, a Mass Effect, like gameplay wise, it is not anything special. The trilogy, like it's a cover shooter, and yes, in a way that it was kind of new-ish during the time. Gears of War kind of really pushed that part forward, but it gameplay wise never really was anything to write home about. There it was really the story and the characters that you were interested about. So I think you can have something on both sides, or mix it with both. But if the heavier one side becomes, the more it has to really stand out from the rest to actually make it to be considered a masterpiece.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on basically everything you said. I think for me personally, I mean, I want a game to do a really good job at blending story and gameplay together. While Dark Souls is one of my favorite games, like I will be the first to say that I just don't care anything about the story of that game. I mean, I have started to care more about it and learn more about the lore and things like that, but to me, the main draw of Dark Souls is the combat. And, go to like the far end of the spectrum. I would say I actually kind of enjoy Mass Effect's gameplay and combat quite a bit, but I do agree, like it's not doing anything hugely revolutionary or anything. But let's go to like far into the spectrum, like a walking simulator, like I don't know, like Firewatch or something like that.
Edith Finch.
That's a really good one, because to me, I guess this is going to be different for different people, because I personally play games for the most part for a good story. Like that's what I want to get out of a game. And What Remains of Edith Finch was one of just the most I won't even say like the most amazing stories, but it just the way it was told, um, and the actual story itself was just so good to me and just affected me so much, that I rate that game as one of the greatest games I think I've played. But there is almost zero gameplay in that. So, I definitely think that I prefer a game like God of War that has fantastic story, fantastic narrative, but also extremely fun gameplay and a world to explore. But for me personally, I think I would rate story higher than gameplay in terms of just what I want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look, for me personally as well. Like I take a good story with shitty gameplay anytime over a game with
absolutely.
good gameplay, shitty story.
I will put up with some really, really bad gameplay, combat, whatever, if there's a good story payoff.
Unless it's Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just watch a playthrough of that game. Watch Akko's playthrough.
No. Honestly, no. Of all the things that you should watch of me, don't watch that one.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into like a whole discussion about, whether certain types of games, if it even does affect you to actually play the game versus just watching it. I still, to this day, I still think that playing a game, even if it's What Remains of Edith Finch, that is just like the bare minimum gameplay, I still think it affects you differently if you actually play it versus watching someone. I'm not saying one is right or wrong, and I'm not saying you can't have a fantastic experience and feel something from watching a game, but I just think there's something about playing the game yourself, holding the controller yourself, moving the character yourself, that is more engaging and gets you more immersed into the actual game.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Really good question, though. Thank you, Pi, for that question. And if anybody else has any questions for next week, once again, just feel free to drop them in our Discord. And again, if you're listening to this, I will do my best to try and get an email address or some way to contact us. I guess you could reach out to us on Twitter. I'm Hal451Gaming on Twitter. And Akko, what is your Twitter handle?
The Akasambo.
The Akko Sambo. That's AKOSOMBO. So yeah, let's move on to our game of the generation discussion. So this is an ongoing discussion that we have been collecting all of the games that we find interesting, noteworthy of this generation. So far, we have mentioned Dark Souls 3, The Witcher 3, Watch Dogs 1, Fortnite, Rocket League, Persona 5, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yes, and I should point out that we not necessarily consider these the best games
Yeah.
of that generation, and we define generation as all the games coming out after 2013 or like 2013 included. But games that kind of defined this generation and added something to this generation that that defined that span of years now that we are on the verge of going into a new console generation.
So, Mr. Akko, Mr. Sambo, what game are you bringing today for your game generation discussion?
I decided to take my home field advantage and go to the horror genre and take PT as the game of the gen, which is an
not
interesting
actually a
choice.
game.
Yeah, because it's not even actually a game. It was just a teaser, a playable teaser, even. But I think it took the internet by storm, and it took the gamer world by storm, and I think rightfully so, because as we all know, I'm a big fan of horror games, and but not playing, but watching horror games, and I really enjoyed the concept of it. Not just the playable part itself, but also just the idea behind it of just kind of shadow dropping this onto the community and being like, yeah, figure out what this is. And obviously it took not too long that people figured out that it was a teaser for a potentially Silent Hill game that then never happened. But I think it's just a cool way to they did that. And you remember it was pretty early in the generation, I think.
Yeah, I think it was like
And
2014,
yeah,
early
pretty early.
2014.
One of the big features they also incorporated was the microphone that was new with that you got
Goodness.
automatically
Yeah.
with controller. But I really enjoyed the idea of kind of just giving that to the community, and the internet has to figure it out on their own. And you saw like in forums and people on Reddit were talking about it and figuring things out and kind of puzzling together on how to solve this and get to the end and how to proceed. And people had to watch playthroughs, and it was just such a cool idea how to approach marketing this new game, or potentially new game, because there was never a game in the end. But so that alone, I think, puts it for me in the list. But then on top of that, I also think, despite the short time, if you would just take it as a game, it was also very good. It was a really cool concept of having this loop and a very simplistic horror idea. But I am of the mindset that, especially with horror, oftentimes the simpler the horror is, the more effective it can also be because it wasn't overloaded with gameplay elements. No, you just walk basically through a corridor, and that was it. But it was so filled with atmosphere and detail. And even watching a couple of people play through, you find new little details that you had missed beforehand, and the person finds something that the other person hasn't found, and that really, for me, really made it stand out and puts it in the list of the most memorable games of this generation. Although it never really was a game, it was just a teaser. But still, I think like more people are familiar with PT than with a lot of full-fledged AAA games that came out. Whereas a lot of these AAA games over the last 7 years that came out, most people will forget or never, like, they heard of them, but nothing comes to mind. But PT really stuck with people, and that, although it's just a teaser, so kudos to them.
I so I've always been very hard on PT because
There you go.
I I loved it. I mean, I love PT. I think it was super cool. Um, I was super excited for it when it came out. I even played through it like about a year ago again, just because I wanted to play through it again. And it is just like a fascinating story, like how it came to be and what it is, and you know how it's disappeared now, and like people are literally selling their PlayStations with it on their PlayStations because you can't even download it anymore. But don't buy a PlayStation just for this. There's actually a PC remake that someone like remade, like that is literally the exact same game. Um, but at the end of the day, it's just a demo. Like it's not anything that revolutionary to me. And I think it kind of annoyed me when this came out because like everybody was like, "Oh, this is the future of gaming. Playable trailers, playable teasers." And I'm like, "Have you guys not ever played a demo of a game before?" Because we used to have so many demos, and thank goodness we do have a lot more demos now. Demos are really coming back, and I think that's super cool. But for a while, like from like 2010 to like 2015, they just stopped putting out demos. And I just thought it was so funny that they put out a glorified demo, and everybody was like, "This is the greatest thing in the world." And I know a lot of it was because it was by Kojima, and everyone praises Kojima, and everyone loves Kojima.
I
Um,
will say though, it has also a lot to do with that it was a self-contained demo, so it had a beginning and an ending,
yeah,
and also that it was well made. Whereas like it was not just a little bit of like you play the first level, but it was the mystery itself to figure out what it was about. Um, and yes, obviously demos and teasers are nothing new in that sense, not. But I think the way the I think at that time we reached the height of a lot of horror games going more into the action shooter direction. Um, with Resident Evil, Silent Hill completely disappeared, and like there was not much going on the horror front. And
Well,
it
there
was
was
just
also there. That's true, but there was also a big resurgence of the horror genre just becoming like walking simulators and just becoming like scare simulators, basically. Which this one was not. I mean, it did have like a really unique gameplay loop and a really unique way of doing things. I would argue that it was a bit too convoluted, trying to figure out someone's name that you have to yell into the controller and I mean,
sure.
but I everything you're saying is true. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to throw that out there too. There were a lot of horror games that were going the opposite direction that I didn't like either. They were just like straight up jump scare simulators. That this one was not.
And
Uh oh, here it comes. Akko's conspiracy
third,
corner again.
third time of the day, but I will postulate that the PT playable teaser actually is the reason why we got the demos back. That started for companies to see. Well, actually, demos get people pretty hyped if they are good. And I also think that it then spawned, or at least inspired, a lot of the more modern horror games that we got then after that. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
more simplistic,
so
more
many.
atmospheric approach to horror games. I think and in that sense, PT really influenced the game industry more than just by being a cool demo to play.
And that is a very good point, and I think that why it deserves to be mentioned in the games of the generation, because it really did inspire so many people. Are you frozen, Akko? Uh oh, I think I lost Akko. Either that, or he's just very disappointed with me right now. Well, this is it. This is how it ends. Akko, can you hear me? Uh oh, is Discord down for everyone? Uh oh, did Discord go down? Well, I tell you what, I will wrap it up with the last game that I was going to bring to the discussion, which uh you know what? I'm trying to think how I should do this. Maybe I should just save this one for next week. And maybe we just go ahead and wrap it up here. Your Discord seems fine. I have no idea what's going on. Oh no, I think my Discord is messing up too. It's not loading messages. Do I need to restart mine? I tell you what, we will just do a tease for next week then. We almost made it through. I don't know what's happening with Discord right now. But we'll just do a little tease and we'll just wrap it up here. because we were almost at the end anyway. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I know that's a little bit of a weird ending, but we will add PT to our list of games of the generation. If you guys would like to mention a game of the generation, once again, you can put it in either one of our Discords, Akko's or mine. We do the show every Fridays at 2 p.m. Central Time on twitch.tv/HAL451. I want to thank Akko for joining me, even though he's not here. I'm sorry that we lost you. Discord is acting up on us today. We now have a podcast in official podcast formats. You can find this podcast just by searching the Joy of Pixels podcast on iTunes, Spotify, all of your favorite gaming podcast services. And this will also be posted to YouTube as a VOD as well, if you want to watch it there anytime. And, now I think I've just disappeared. Well, that's going to do it for us all. Thank you guys for joining me so much. Sorry about the weird ending, but we had a good time. We had a good go at it up until the end. All right. Thank you all, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.